Up next, we have one of the awaited sessions of the day, Sex Ed Without Shame. Let's say it again, Sex Ed Without Shame. Did you hear me stutter? No, so that's what we'll do. Challenges and roadmap for schools, families, and MHPs. This panel unpacks how we can make sex education inclusive, age-appropriate, and stigma-free across communities. Please welcome our speakers. Get ready, everyone, because our next speaker is someone who has turned sex education into one of the most empowering, funny, and fearlessly honest conversations in this country. Please put your hands together for Anju Kish. She, her, founder and CEO of UnTaboo, certified sexuality educator, POCSO trainer, best-selling author, and 4-time TEDx speaker. She's the creator of India's first gamified sex ed platform for kids and teens, the force behind 200+ talks and workshops, the writer of How I Got My Belly Button, and the recipient of the Vogue India Best Sex Educator Award 2025. She uses humor, heart, and hard facts to make sex and safety education accessible to everyone, for every family, every child, and every school. Let's welcome the inspiring and unstoppable Anju Kish, everyone. And you're going with our brand color. Awesome, you're matching. All right. Next, get ready to welcome our next panelist, because she's the next speaker whose work has literally protected millions of children across India. Please join me in welcoming Nehal Parekh. She is the Chief Operating Officer, Programs at Arpan, India's largest NGO working to prevent child sexual abuse. With over 16 years in the development sector, Nehal has worked across India and the UK, from the Akanksha Foundation and Make-A-Wish to serving as a lead child protection practitioner with the Ealing Council in London. At Arpan, she leads programs, research, digital learning, and partnerships, helping ensure children aged 4 to 18 learn personal safety in a way that's empowering, accessible, and life-changing. Under her leadership, Arpan's work has reached an incredible 19.2 million children and adults. Yes. Created policy-level change and built tools like arpanelearn.com, a free safety education platform now being used across the country. She's fierce, committed, and fearless in her mission to make every child safer. Please give a huge round of applause for energetic IMHS welcome to Nehal Parekh. Up next, we have someone whose work has shaped the landscape of inclusive education in India. Please welcome Rashna Sadri. She's a psychologist, special educator, and a passionate advocate for accessible learning for all. With over 20 years of experience, Rashna holds an MA in psychology and an MEd in special education and is certified by the Rehabilitation Council of India as a teacher trainer for autism and learning disabilities. She currently serves as the program coordinator and IQAC coordinator at SOPAN's Suvidya College of Special Education, where she has led curriculum development, research, and national-level teacher training programs. Her academic footprint spans SNDT University, the University of Mumbai, IGNOU, and more. Rashna has published research on autism and inclusion, conducted workshops across the country, and was recognized by the Welcome Cure Group for excellence in special education. Today, she joins us on the panel, Sex Ed Without Shame, bringing a powerful inclusion-first lens to conversations around sexuality education. Please help me welcome Rashna Sadri. And now, let's introduce the powerhouse who will be steering this conversation. Your moderator for this panel is Ms. Ruchika Jain. A counseling psychologist with over 5 years of hands-on clinical experience, she holds 2 master's degrees, including a specialization in marriage and family therapy, and works deeply with individuals, couples, and families. Ruchika runs a thriving private practice under the name of Well Prism, both online and offline, and has also served as a visiting psychologist at IIM Raipur, bringing her expertise into high-performance institutional spaces. She is also the co-organizer of IMHS 3.0, and one of the reasons this incredible event is possible. Please give a round of applause for our moderator, Ruchika Jain. And before I hand over my mic to Ruchika, let's lift the taboo by yelling, sex! Sex! I heard some taboo, so sex! Sex! All right. Yes, Ruchika.
And the earth didn't shatter and the roof didn't fall.
Surprise, surprise.
Good morning, and thank you so much for coming here and making this a huge success as I predicted tomorrow. So before starting the conversation on sex ed without shame, challenges and roadmap for school, families, and mental health professionals, let's start with basic concepts and then get into the legal and ethical part of it. A question to everybody: did we know or do we remember having any sort of sexual education in school? Yes? Oh, wow. I am surprised my school did not have it.
We all read Mills and Bones.
I think my teacher just skipped biology part, so nothing. Okay, so first question starting with you, Anju ma'am. Why does education around sex, consent, and personal safety remain a taboo in India, even though we all know how essential it is for children's well-being and protection?
Well, I think the biggest barrier I feel to sex education in India is shame. You know, we associate this term sex with so much of shame. And the ironic bit is we are the largest populated country in the world. So can you imagine the amount of sex we Indians are having? So it's okay to do, but it's not okay to talk about it. And that shame is, in fact, the name of my company is UnTaboo. And when I was, deciding on a name for UnTaboo, I was like, okay, I'm keeping a name UnTaboo, but would sex education always be a taboo in the country? I think I made the right decision because I don't see it being UnTaboo for decades to come. Things are definitely changing, but we are a large society. So I think the shame around sex education is the biggest taboo, I feel. It's not serving the cause of sex education well. But actually, if you look at shame around sex education, it's come from the colonial Raj. India was a very open society, right? Bodies and sexuality were openly discussed. We were the land of Kama Sutra. We have the Khajuraho temples, and so it was very open. But we've been conditioned over hundreds of years since the Raj, the colonial Raj, that talking about bodies and sex means we are in some way taking away the innocence of our children. You know, we're confusing conversations with taking away innocence, with wanting, if you have conversations, that means our children are going to experiment, or we're putting thoughts in their minds which are not there. So we have a lot of myths around the fact that this is what conversations on sex is going to do. And I think one of the key factors is that we misconstrue the term sex education. If I were to ask you all, what do you think is sex? Give me some topics which you think come under sex education.
You all had breakfast, shout out loud.
Sex comes under sex education, fantastic, yes. What else? Safe sex practices. Good touch, bad touch, which we now call safe touch, unsafe touch, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, masturbation, menstruation, consent. So do all topics include the topic of sex? A safe touch, unsafe touch does not talk about sex. A talk on puberty does not talk about sex. Even talking about online safety, talking about peer pressure, talking about changing relationship with parents during puberty, all of that is sex education. But because of the presence of this word sex, we just reject the entire concept of sex education and we create so much of shame around it. And I think that is the biggest barrier. I mean, when we, I would just like to give this analogy, which I love giving all the time, is that if we don't teach our children about fire, are we protecting them from fire? It's just that when it happens, they won't know how to protect themselves. So when we don't give sex education to our children, we are taking away the only protective layer they have to keep themselves safe and to make informed choices. So I think that's something to think about.
Thank you so much. And I think I completely agree with the fact that sex education is in no way telling us that, okay, go do it.
Sex.
It's just telling you how and when it is the appropriate time, space, consent, boundaries, everything, if and when you want to do it.
In fact, that's very true. If sex education led to sex, then we Indians would not have been 1.4 billion because none of us were spoken to about sex. Right?
Thank you so much for answering. So the next one goes along the same way that we were talking about. What does truly age-appropriate personal safety or sex education look like in an Indian school, and how can it be tailored across development stages as well?
See, when we talk about age-appropriate sex education, the thought which comes to our mind is we'll talk to them when it is age-appropriate. In India, age-appropriate could be 20 or never, right? So, and age-appropriate basically means talk to a child when the child is at that particular developmental stage. Talk about privacy, body parts when a child is 2 and 3. Talk about body safety when a child is 4, maybe even earlier, and I think Nehal would be better able to tell us that. So these conversations have to start, and I think in the Indian context, if you bring in Indian context, then these conversations will not happen. Like I said, we have to look at the developmental age of a child and open those conversations accordingly. And again, not every child is going to be at the same developmental stage at the same age. But while we have to unify this conversation, and thus we need to figure that, okay, at this age, say at age 3 to 5, a child needs to be spoken about privacy, body safety. At age 7, 8, today we need to start talking about puberty. At age 11 and 12, 100% we need to introduce the child to sex and reproduction. And the questions on sex and reproduction today are coming very early. We have kids as young as 3rd and 4th graders. We go into schools to teach about body safety or puberty. All the questions are about sex. All the questions are about what is 69. What does the middle finger mean? Teachers tell us that when they go into classroom, 4th grader teachers, and they're talking about, randomly if the teacher says, okay, turn to page 69, the kids start laughing. Kids start laughing is one thing. There'll be a group of children at the back who start making moaning sounds. Now that is a red flag. Moaning sounds means the child has been exposed to some kind of pornography or has seen a show where they've seen this kind of thing. So, today we cannot say that even the developmentally right age today, I think, does not apply in sex education because the exposure is so much that we have to start conversations way earlier than probably what we did, back then, or if there were any conversations back then. So I think you just have to do a need analysis and then figure what's the topics that you want to talk about. But going, stepwise, then privacy, teaching the right terms for the body parts, not calling genitals nunnus, but giving them the right terminology. You know what? In one of the sessions I was doing 4th grade, and I asked the children, what are the private parts called? And this little boy stood up and said, my mama told me my private parts are called Eiffel Tower. We have all kinds of creative parents. I think keep the creativity for making concepts simple for children to understand rather than giving them the wrong information.
Correct. I think just sharing a small incident. So similar to this story, if a child was introduced to their private parts as words like candle and Eiffel Tower, the moment you tell them what actual candle or Eiffel Tower looks like, they will be confused. They will not know what to do or what to say.
Well, if the boys are told their private parts are Eiffel Tower, they anyways have a major issue about the size. And this question on the size of the penis comes to us from grade 4 to grade 12. So can you imagine the worry? And we're not even it's such a small thing of telling them size does not matter. Oh guys, size really does not matter. Huh?
Thank you so much. Nehal ma'am, we will come to you a little later when it comes to the legal and ethics part of it. But the next question is to you, Rashna ma'am. How should these conversations be adaptive for children with disabilities or neurodivergence so that they receive equitable, safe, and accessible learning?
I'll move a little bit back, all right? We are there for our children with disability. We think that we are supporting them. Now, unfortunately, most of the time, this support becomes a control. And that control is how you think as an adult, what the child needs to know or what the child doesn't need to know. Now, in the school systems, the NGOs are doing quite a lot of work on, training their little ones in healthcare and nutrition and cleaning themselves and so on. However, the focus is yet on the good touch, bad touch. We do realize suddenly that the child is a teenager now, and since he's not been able to tell us that, I too am growing up, and I also have the same needs as any other neurodivergent person or the neurotypical person, there are signs and behaviors that they show. Now, an alert teacher helps the child, teach the child what is private, what is to be done in the school class, and things are sorted. However, there are some who get hyper. The control comes in. And they start, asking the parents to take over. The parents don't know what to do. Sometimes a counselor is referred to. However, the counselor has never worked with that child before, and therefore the child is never going to listen to that counselor for at least a few sessions. So we are losing out on a lot of time. And most of the time, these children are just kind of left. Yes, there are parents who train their children in menstruation and taking care of themselves, who are very, very severe, who don't speak, but yet they can take care of themselves. So we have both the sides to the coin.
Thank you so much for answering. So now that we're talking about consent and boundaries and things like that, how can psychologists and other professionals guide parents in talking about consent, boundaries, bodily autonomy, and safe and unsafe relationships at home? Before we go to school, I think these conversations need to start at home with their own parents and relatives, because we know in our country things don't happen just outside. I think there are houses, unfortunately and sadly, there are houses where unsafe situations are coming up. So how do we begin those conversations with our children to tell them if X and Y person, irrespective of where you are in that space and you feel unsafe, what to do and what not to do? And this question is open to everybody to answer, I guess.
I think most importantly, I guess the process starts with us as counselors or, mental health professionals. I think as soon as we start normalizing these conversations and become comfortable to have these conversations, whether it's within our own homes, our own setups, I think we can help parents far more. What we've seen, at Arpan or even my previous workplaces, what I've seen is that, we are catering to a very, very wide range of parents. You'll have parents from BMC schools to you'll have parents from international schools, you'll have working parents, you'll have homemakers, and everybody's reality and perceptions are very different. And I think it's important to help parents, one, understand that talking about sex or talking about personal safety, it's not just about that. It's actually talking about autonomy. It's talking about rights. It's talking about the child's safety. The moment you start helping parents see the bigger picture, I think that's where, the whole feeling of being very overwhelmed comes down. I think the second is just helping them with the right kind of vocabulary. We just spoke about age-appropriate information and age-appropriate education. And I think what does really age-appropriate mean for parents? Because not everybody comes with a very in-depth knowledge of developmental stages. And I think just to simplify it, to say if you have a child of 4 to 5 years and if you want to talk to this child about what are the child's private parts, or how can the child come and tell you if he or she is feeling unsafe or if they are feeling unsafe, just to help the parents understand that these are some words that you can use, or these are some pictures that you can use. I think the other part is helping parents understand that you can't one day go and start having these conversations. Having conversations and asking a child how you're feeling has to become a normal part of your day-to-day conversations. Helping children, even have a voice in simple decisions. So many times we don't even ask children whether they like something or they dislike something, whether they want to do something or they don't want to do something. And I think children are just so trained to be obedient. I think that's the biggest problem. That children forget that they have a voice. And if they don't remember that they have a voice, they will not have a conversation. They will only follow instructions. And I think to help parents understand that having conversations and enabling children to make choices, voice out, whether it's having basic conversations in your family, on dining tables, in your living rooms, that's important. And then you move on to having the right kind of vocabulary to have sensitive topics being discussed, connected to basic safety. If it's okay to teach your child about crossing a road and how do you do it, it's absolutely okay to teach a child about what are your private parts and how do you keep yourself safe. So I think normalizing, giving the right kind of resources, content really helps. The other thing I've seen helps is parents sometimes hesitate, or for that matter, all of us, what we are worried about is, if I start talking about private parts, or if I start talking about unsafe touch or an unsafe safe touch, what will happen if the child will ask me a counter question? How will I handle that? And I think that lack of confidence sometimes stops us as adults to even attempt to have those conversations. So I think training parents on what kind of questions are you going to be asked, what may come up, what do generally children want to know, and I think enabling them to answer those questions just builds their confidence. Over the last few years, we've trained over 3 lakh teachers and parents across the country. They have gone ahead and taught personal safety to over 30 lakh children. And I'm not talking about cities. I'm talking about districts like Bastar in Chhattisgarh. I'm talking about remote areas in Rajasthan, MP, Goa. It's possible. It's not that it's not possible. We've done studies with over 1,000 children to see whether they've actually understood, whether they actually are able to identify unsafe touches, and yes, they have. Just because the teachers have had those sessions, just because the parents have had those conversations at home. So I think it's possible. It's not rocket science, it's not so complex. We all know what is right and what is appropriate. It's just about simplifying it for the child, simplifying it, I think, for parents, and to build that confidence in them that you can do this. You can talk to your child about private parts, you can talk to your child about personal safety rules, or for that matter, even about sex education. It's, I think we just connect everything to the body and sex. I think we need to shift the mindset and connect it to safety, making safe choices, having the right to make a choice, saying no, setting boundaries, and it comes with simple things in life.
I also think, and agreeing with what Nehal says, that it can't be just a one-time talk. Consent is actually like a language. The earlier you learn it, the more confident and more fluent you will be with the language of consent. And I think if I were to talk about consent, tell me honestly, how many of you associate the word consent with sexual consent? Right? Usually when we talk about consent, we think of, oh, you need consent for sex, or you need consent for somebody to touch you. But consent, you actually have to teach social consent first. And I'm not pointing fingers, but okay, so many of you are clicking our videos, right? And you're going to put it up on the social media or wherever. Ideally, there should be consent. Okay? I'm not saying don't do it. Please do, please tag UnTaboo. But I'm saying that consent starts with social consent, and then we slowly shift towards sexual consent or bodily safety, consent. And just to take forward what Nehal was saying, when you're teaching consent to a child, it's not that you ask them, okay, do you want to eat bhindi or not? Or karela or not? The child is going to say a no. That does not mean now we have to listen to that. We have to respect what the child's choice is. You be a smart parent and you give them two choices. Do you want to eat karela or bhindi? And then child will choose one and say, yeah, sure, we'll do that. That is also teaching them the fact that their choices are respected. Right? So there are always smart ways to teach consent without taking away the autonomy and without even scaring them. Today, we've gone out of control teaching kids about body safety, and we're scaring them in a way because we're not teaching it correctly. It is about empowerment. It is not scaring a child. So teaching about safety is super important, but teaching it in the correct way is even more important than that.
Can I just add to that? Lovely that you brought up the word choice. So we, for special needs, especially for autism, we definitely, try to make them independent. And for that purpose, we ask choices. The other reason is, of course, when we want to, make them do something and we want to know what reinforcer works. So the choice making is very important. And yes, visuals are also very important for our children with disability, to be able to understand what you are trying to impart to them. And definitely, at the lower age, all of us are talking, it's comfortable to talk about hygiene, it's comfortable to talk about body parts. However, it's not very comfortable to talk about sex and even consent. So yes, we do teach them social consent, as in, I would like to go out with you today or go to the mall today, and so on. And that is how the training begins for our children.
Thank you so much for answering.
I think I'd just like to add
please.
one more thing, if we have the time. I think, one thing that we've realized is rationalization of any concept stays much longer. I think retention and understanding, whether it's among children or among adults, when it's associated to rationalization helps. So one thing that we've seen, for example, is telling children who are your trusted adults doesn't work. Because this whole concept of stranger danger is so, I guess, glorified, while we know that over 90% of cases, sexual abuse happens through known people. So I think we really need to understand that a child needs to have the skill to identify what is safe and unsafe. The child needs to tell you who their trusted adults are, because they know their reality more. And I think it comes with a sense of respect as well. So many times we are so, I guess as adults, I don't know whether it comes from control or care, but we are so used to making decisions for children that we forget to ask them what their realities are at home. And especially, I think, as counselors or even as teachers or social workers who we aren't a part of their family setup. And no matter how qualified we are, there will be things about their family structure and dynamics that we won't know, but the child will know. And I think it's important to remember that whenever you're talking about any kind of concept, any kind of safety planning, any kind of, decision-making process for children.
And I think just one more. Don't forget one crucial thing, that while it's important to teach a child consent, it's equally important to teach a child to ask for consent. And I think that is something sometimes we forget. We're always teaching them to protect their boundaries, but we're not teaching them to not compromise the boundaries of others. That becomes a very crucial thing.
I think that is a very, very valid point. Moving ahead, Nehal ma'am, could you tell us more about the POCSO Pakad Lega campaign? I've seen the videos of it and they look amazing and very impactful.
Thank you.
So one is that. Two, I know all of us are working in the field of mental health or have families at home. Unfortunately, a very common incident that we have heard or experienced or known about is if a child reports inappropriate touching, whether it's by an adult or another child, what is the school's responsibility and how should the response be shaped by POCSO Act?
I think to start with, I would say let's not start getting scared of POCSO, and let's not start getting scared about mandatory reporting. I'm saying this because, regularly we see that schools or, counselors working in schools, when they come to know about any incident, I think the biggest fear that sets in is, okay, how do I handle this because I'm expected to report? Right? And I think the most dangerous thing in that entire panic situation is you forget to do safety planning for the child. And I think we need to start with that. To simplify this, as a school or any professional working in a school setup, if we've come to know, we need to first ensure that the child is safe, that abuse stops if it's ongoing, especially if it's familial abuse or abuse happening within the school setup. And that would involve working with the trusted adult of the child. That would involve actually trying to understand what happened, how frequent, what is the level of access to the child. I think the second step is it's extremely important as schools to have a child protection committee set up. In Maharashtra, I know every school is mandated to have a Sakhi Savitri committee. How many of them are actually functional is a big question. And I think as schools, we can try and go back and, make sure that there is a committee which is functional. When I mean it's function, people know that they are a part of the committee. Because many a times we don't know, it's on paper. And when a case happens, the teachers are called suddenly, they come to know that, oh, I was on this committee. So it's as bad as that, right? So I'm saying let's have a functional committee. Let's have these committee members trained regularly on what the law expects the school to do, to ensure that even before you go and report it to the police or you go and report it to the child welfare committees, what are your steps as a school to ensure the child's safety? Have you spoken to the parent? In case if the abuse is happening within the family, the non-offending parent. Have you assessed the dynamics, the power dynamics within the home? What will happen when you report? Because so many times we see in large number of these cases, the children withdraw the complaint. Simply because there is so much pressure on the child from the parents to withdraw it, there's pressure from the schools to withdraw it, and that's not what you want. You're basically increasing the trauma for that child rather than helping the child. So I think educating the right kind of people in school setups, having designated child protection teachers, counselors being trained on POCSO, yes, it is a mandate and the law expects us to report for sure. But at the same time, we also have the responsibility to ensure the child's safety and that we follow confidentiality. I think that's extremely key. The other thing that I would say is that, we all think about POCSO a lot in terms of an adult abusing a child. But honestly, we are working, as an organization, we are working with a particular institution where you have adolescents who are filed under POCSO. And almost more than 50% of these children have actually been only in consensual relationships. It's a really, really sad affair. Most of the times when we start working with these young boys, they don't even know that there is a law called POCSO. They don't even understand that what they thought as a consensual relationship doesn't actually allow them in India to actually make those choices. And I think it's really, really critical that we start educating our young girls and boys. And I completely agree with you. It needs to start early. It needs to start with maybe grade 4 and above, because that's the age when today children are starting talking about girlfriends and boyfriends, and they're talking about sexual relationships and this competition in terms of how far you've gone. And suddenly one parent decides to file a complaint and the boy realizes he's in a remand home. It's really sad and very unfair. And I think so when we talk about POCSO, we don't just talk about how an adult can get booked, but also it's important to educate children on what does the law allow you to give consent to and what does the law doesn't allow you to give consent to. There is a huge debate on the age of consent, and I hope at some point we as a country relook at it. But till that happens, the fact is that any child under the age of 18 is not allowed to give consent for a sexual relationship in India.
In fact, when we talk about sex and safety to teens, and we talk about the fact that under POCSO till 18, you're not allowed any sexual activity.
Yeah.
So the thing is, what all? We said, no, nothing. How about making out? I said no. How about kissing? I said, but the law doesn't clearly state kissing is not allowed, but it says any sexual activity, and kissing could be considered a sexual activity. You should see the expressions. Because that's not fair. You mean who is going to arrest us? Are our parents going to complain? So there's a complete sense of disbelief and what is this government doing for us? Then they ask me which is the country which has the lowest age for this. And I said, Japan used to have it at 11. So they say, let's all shift to Japan. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Making a child aware of, the law, because sometimes not knowing could get them into trouble.
I think what's important, it's striking that fine balance between creating fear versus creating the ability to make informed choices. It's hard to go and tell a child in grade 9 or 10, you can't have a girlfriend, you can't have any sexual relationships. They're going to laugh at us, honestly. And it's going to be a completely blocked wall. But I think it's important for children to understand that, unfortunately, if you are in a situation like this, what are the legal consequences on you? I think when you enable them with right, honest, clear information, you're enabling them with the power to make safe choices.
But also we tell them that, hey, it's okay to have a girlfriend, boyfriend, or any partner, but dating can also be platonic. Concentrate on building deeper friendships with people you really like. You don't have to introduce any kind of sexual activity in it. But unfortunately, when we talk about relationship, we just ban the entire relationship.
True.
Right.
So unfortunately, our country believes in the law of abstinence till a very high age, 18. And the perpetrators, who really abuse children, and especially children with disabilities, unfortunately, sometimes do get away because the parents are scared. The child is not able to say or even indicate that there is something wrong until and unless maybe there is some kind of bleeding happening and the parent realizes and takes the child to the hospital, and the doctor realizes that there is something that has happened to the child. And unfortunately, in most of our government hospitals, what happens is before the doctor even asks the parent to go and report it, and the doctor makes the report, the parents run away. So though the report is made, no action is taken. And this is ground reality where children with disability are abused.
I think, the other problem with POCSO is, so we have a national study in 2007 which says 1 in every 2 child in India has experienced some form of child sexual abuse. But till date, if you see the NCRB data year on year in terms of how many cases actually come under POCSO, and when you compare it to the total number of children in the country, is every case actually reported? No. Very few cases get reported, and those are mostly the high intense cases. Where when I mean high intense, where there is extreme level of physical sexual abuse, rape cases. But a vast majority of cases that actually fall under child sexual abuse, that actually have traumatic impact on children, they get completely unreported or even unnoticed. And I think as counselors, as people working in this sector, I think we need to think about those children. You know, a child may be equally traumatized being touched inappropriately by a known adult repeatedly, even if it didn't mean removing clothes, even if it didn't mean rape for that child. Now, are we really worried about that child as much? And I think that's something that we need to think about, you know. So having very, very strong reporting mechanisms in your school, every teacher knows where to go to when there is a disclosure, basic training on handling disclosures. What do you do when a child comes to you immediately? Because the way you respond as a first responder can actually build or break that child's confidence to go through that entire process. You know, how calm are you? Have you ensured the child about shared confidentiality? We have so many times, we have adults who've gone ahead and promised children, I'm not going to tell anybody anything, please don't worry, I promise you. But the fact is, the second moment they're going to go and tell the principal. How is the child going to trust you? So the whole idea of shared confidentiality, need to know to ensure your safety. What's going to happen if we go to the police station? Who's going to accompany this child? I think these are some minute details that we forget about, but they have a huge impact on children.
Thank you so much for such an interesting panel discussion. We are running out of time. So maybe we could take just one question and wrap it up. Yes, we have a question at the back. We can do one more maybe.
My name is Himali and I'm working on my research and PhD in art therapy on NEP 2020 and the education, that efficacy basically. So two main things that they want is, one is art integrated learning and one is socio-emotional education to the kids, right? Even the new education policy is not talking about the sex education. They have put it in terms of comprehensive sexuality studies. So we have done these researches where we give them a prompt like draw a fence and a house, which on analysis and assessment proves about their consent and how safe they feel. According to the pilot research, 87.14 kids have broken fences or they have walls. The question here is, since this is a non-verbal topic, it is still considered as a non-verbal topic. Is there any way where this can be implemented in the national framework? It is okay if it is a non-verbal topic at this stage, but how to, I am asking is how to get into the system is my main idea, is my main question.
Well, getting into the system, the government actually has made sex education compulsory in a lot of places. And over the years, right from 2008, I think they first introduced the AEP program, Adolescent Education Program. And even now, I think recently, NCERT, I think did introduce some program. But I think the thing that we are failing to recognize is that these programs will only be effective when there is proper teacher training. We are failing, we are throwing the teachers at the deep end of the pool, and then we're standing them and then standing back and wondering why are they drowning. They're drowning because they've not been trained well. I mean, today if I give my UnTaboo content to any of you on a PowerPoint with speaker notes, I'm sure you'll be able to go and lead the training session. But what you're going to stumble when the child asks a question and you have to figure how to answer that age appropriately. You're going to stumble when somebody in the crowd starts giggling at something that you've said, or somebody says something inappropriate. And the kind of inappropriate things these kids say in the session, if you're not trained for it, you're just going to stand back in shock. So when we give those tools to the teachers, proper training, proper resources, proper videos, content, teach them to create safe environments, safe where kids can open up, teach them to handle all tricky topics age appropriately. When that kind of training plus the support of the system, that you're not going to be in trouble for something that you've said. That institutional support, I think that's when it will get integrated into the system.
Can I just add on? So our NEP for special educational needs, they refer to the RBWD Act 2016. Now in RBWD Act, it is very clearly mentioned that community living, including them in the community. And under that, it's also mentioned where choice is to be given to the children, young adults with disabilities, as to who they would want to partner with, be part of the community. So all this has to be, of course, teacher education, very important. So in our RCI syllabus for the B.Ed, we do have one paper on adulthood issues. We do have 2 units on sexuality and marriage and housing. But however, these topics are not streamlined, as in every college teaches it the way they feel it is right. So that kind of streamlining, see, RCI has given us the broad headline. Now, how to teach that is our choice. And then how does the student, the B.Ed student, take it forward as a teacher later is, of course, with all their prejudices and so on, they may just decide to ignore that. So
I think we have to treat it like a vaccine program. When we have the government introduces some vaccine, they make it mandatory. They do a national campaign destigmatizing that problem for which the vaccine is being given. Sex ed should just be like that. Compulsory in every school, proper training given, national campaigns to destigmatize sex education, proper policies in place for body safety, for disclosures. Only then will it be impactful. So there's a lot of systematic change which needs to happen.
I think just to refer to the NEP actually, the NEP, if you see it in totality, is very good. I think, working closely with NCRT to ensure that those, the problem that happens, I think, in our country is there are 2 kinds of national level curriculum. One is your actual textbooks for children, one is your training manuals for teachers. And in our experience, what we've seen is when the right kind of content gets integrated into the textbooks, the high chances that that content will actually reach the child. But of course, I agree with the right kind of training for the teachers. It took us almost 5 years to ensure that personal safety got integrated into the national textbooks for grade 4 EVS subject. Just one subject, just one textbook in 5 years. So the process is really slow, but honestly, people like us have no choice but to work closely with the system to get this rolled out, because that's where the largest access of children lies.
So I think first, privately we start working on it and then think of going to the national framework would be the right answer.
And that's what we at UnTaboo do. Quietly put your head down and work. The government will come when it is ready to,
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that answered your question. We can just take one more question, I guess. Whoever has the mic. I'm just going to randomly pick one person, please. I'm sorry.
Thank you. My question has got to do with, so I had recently been in a school where one of the issues that one of the trustees had told me about was that there is a special ed student who has reached puberty, male student who is now behaving inappropriately. Now, in the context of all the things that we've been talking about in the panel, regarding how the topic about consent needs to start from young age and it needs to be a constant conversation, but now that the child has reached puberty, how do we then handle the situation at this juncture while including the child within the educational system?
Yeah. So what one generally does is train the child as in bring the child out from the general classroom, not during class hours. Do train the child through visuals and appropriate material as to how to take care of his own needs. Once he understands that, even a non-verbal child we have seen quietly goes to the bathroom and relieves himself and comes back washing hands, everything, and they sit quietly in the classroom. The behaviors go down. So because I don't know what to do, okay, you are telling me no all the time, but what to do instead? That is why the behaviors start coming up, okay? And that happens with everything. Even if you and I are told, no, ye mat karo, पर मैं करूँ क्या? तो मैं करूँ क्या? ये behavior हो जाएगा. Okay, so that is something that they can do.
Thank
That's
you so
quite
much.
helpful. Thank
I
you.
hope that answers your question. So with that, we come to the end of this panel with a great discussion, and then we can have certificates and goodie bags for you.